I've never been one to tell a scary story. I work with wires and noise, VHF radio, wooden poles, cable chewed up by sun and dust. Things you measure with a multimeter, not with a prayer. In 1997, I was doing line maintenance on a state highway that cuts through northern Arizona, bordering the Navajo Nation. Working at night, you learn to respect two kinds of emptiness: the silence before a sound and the silence after it stops. In a week of dry heat and warm wind, I heard both voids many times. That's when I realized something had learned my rhythm. It wasn't a movie ghost. It was more useful, like a key trying a lock until it finds the right groove. It started with a short whistle, almost like a tired bird. Then it turned into a voice, first a man's, then a woman's. Later, mine. Always with a syllable out of place, a heavy R, a wrong timing. If I close my eyes now, I can smell the wet wool and hot dust that came before every repetition. I know what you're going to think. I thought it too. It was someone on the road. It was a coyote. It was fatigue. I really wanted it to have been any of those things. I was 32, driving an old F-150, 2 faded headlights, and a VHF radio with a bent antenna. My job was to climb poles, check rusted junctions and clean contacts. Sometimes the utility company gave me work on a repeater, a small grey box attached to a limestone hill, some cables that sing when the wind signals rain. I liked the gravel road that led to Earl's gas station, 2 pumps, a screaming freezer, and coffee so burnt it was like a liquid scalding. Earl was dry with a dusty beard and one eye always on the horizon. He kept peppermint candies in a glass jar and spoke like someone who didn't need to prove anything. If you hear people where there shouldn't be, don't answer, not even for a joke. I rented a room behind a garage in Cameron. I had a cassette tape from my sister. She had gone to Flagstaff to study and sent me a recording with music and messages and a toolbox I'd inherited from my father, everything covered in oil and smelling of rust. The routine was simple: late afternoon light hitting the dash sideways, dust coming through the vent, stops on the shoulder where only grey scrub grows and the bones of the desert are visible. The radio occasionally picked up truck drivers' conversations, sometimes a patrol, mostly just the wind. In a small notebook, I recorded the static that returned after maintenance. Some static is an animal chewing insulation. Some static is a loose cable. Some static is just the day turning into night. When you work with this, you start to feel the personality of the noise. That week, the noise had a pulse and a crooked sense of humor. The first strange thing, before anything else, was the feeling that I wasn't alone in the pause between the poles. I didn't see a car park behind me, no tire dust, nothing. Just that childish unease of someone staring from afar. I did what I do, measured, tightened, tested, and on the last sip of cold coffee, a short whistle, a single note, 3 steps from my boot. Could have been the wind, I thought. But the wind doesn't choose 3 steps. On the second day, they sent me to check a metal plate in a shallow limestone canyon, a kind of cave mouth full of stubborn pigeons. The light entered sideways, sounds hit the wall and returned thinner, and I had my old handheld flashlight. I put my bag down and heard small stones rolling from the dark. It wasn't an avalanche, it was dripped. Tap, tap, and silence. I tried to stay rational as small animal. Bat, fat lizard. What got me wasn't the pebbles, it was the chain. There was a rusty chain attached to a maintenance ladder, one of those that geologists use when they come to measure cracks. Heavy chain, thick links. There was no wind inside, just still air, like a closed space. I had a habit of touching it to see if there was vibration when a distant train passed, but there was no train. Out of nowhere, the chain gave 3 dry knocks without swinging. Clang, clang, clang. It didn't twirl, it didn't keep dancing, it just knocked, as if someone had flicked it from the inside out. I stood still, hand dirty with dust, waiting for the echo to die. I went outside the cave mouth and grabbed the clipboard. I wrote chain knocked 3x and cursed myself for writing it. Before leaving, I decided to test the explanation my brain desired. I swung the chain myself. It kept moving for a long time, rotating, hitting the steps as any heavy thing would. That was not what I had heard. The next night, near mile marker 34 on the highway, I stopped to adjust a junction box. It was a new moon, black cloth sky, and large mosquitoes. The gravel made a polite sound under my boot. I heard, coming from deep in the desert darkness, a man's voice, clear, medium pitch, that sounded like someone trying to speak softly and not knowing how. I see you, in English, each word with too much space between the syllables. It wasn't a whisper. It was as if the person were about 8 meters away, nocturnal and sober. I responded reflexively, "Hello?" And the wind chose that moment not to exist. I kept staring where I thought the voice was, expecting a flashlight, a glint of metal, a cough. Nothing. I went back to the truck, turned on the radio. Silence. And then, from my own seat, the smell of wet wool, damp, sweet, wrong in that heat, came into my nose. I had nothing made of wool in the truck. 4th day. I went back to Earl's station. He looked at me over his cup and just said, "Did people whistle at you?" I laughed, a little annoyed. "Coyotes imitate, right?" I tried. He shrugged. "Coyotes imitate badly. People imitate worse." He sold me a new lighter and a pack of peppermints. "If you answer, do it right," he added, as if it were a work instruction. In the afternoon, I needed to check a repeater on a limestone ridge overlooking 3 valleys. The ground creaked with dryness. The wind passed underneath like someone carrying a secret. I looked at the analog watch on my wrist, 1913. The first note came from the east, a short whistle, almost cordial. I answered with silence. A second whistle, identical, now from the west. The distance between the two seemed the same, as if someone had copied the position on the map and pasted it on the other side. The third note came from behind, closer, and stopped in the middle, as if the mouth making the sound had forgotten to close. I felt my sweaty neck chill despite the heat. I lit a bad cigarette that I don't even smoke and let it burn in my hand, just to have something alive besides myself. "If you're there, speak," it came out of my mouth before I could swallow the phrase. The VHF radio crackled by itself. Pure static, then 2 words, cut off by the device itself. You. I turned it off and back on. Practical. I did the usual check. Nothing. When I returned to the truck, there was a cassette tape on the passenger seat. My tape. My sister's. But the blue label was turned upside down, as if someone had taken it out and put it back in a hurry. I remember how I leave things. I'm picky about that. I drove the next few miles with the headlights only catching the dust. At the first turnout, I stopped. I put the tape in the player, mostly to prove to myself it was paranoia. 3 songs, my sister's voice laughing, a message telling me to eat better, all the same. At the very end, almost at the auto-reverse click, my own voice came in, low. "If you're there, speak." The same manner, the same echo, but with a scratching R. I hadn't recorded that. I turned off the car. The lights stayed on a second longer than they should have before dying. The desert did the rest of the work. I wanted to disassemble the world into explainable pieces. I took the tape to the room, rewound it with a pen, listened again. I thought about interference, over-recording, audio leakage. I swabbed the tape head with alcohol. The segment was there, clean, as if it had been born on the tape. I turned on the tube TV for company and repeated to myself, people play tricks. Maybe kids, maybe someone from the station, maybe nothing. I went back to the map. I noticed that the 3 stops where things happened drew a crooked triangle. At each corner, something knocked at me. The chain that banged, the voice that called, the tape that answered. I don't like to see patterns where there aren't any, but since I was a boy, my sister said I trace trails on the floor with my finger when I'm worried. I saw the trail. What if it wasn't where, but when? All three always at times ending in 3. I had noted them without meaning to: 1913, 2303, 1733. This proves nothing, but proves what exactly? The next day, I deliberately left the car at another turnout and walked a gravel path that truckers use as a bathroom when the highway is stopped. I found faded pink ribbons tied to 3 bushes, spaced out by smaller stones stacked into little houses that weren't quite towers, traces of people or rituals of someone killing time. In the midday sun, nothing is afraid of anything, but my stomach felt tight. I heard footsteps that stopped half a beat after mine. I stopped. They stopped. I took 2 steps. 2 steps echoed half a second later. The sound was too clean, like a track recorded with good headphones. I called out, "Is anyone there?" The silence came with the smell of warm metal, the kind that stays on your hand after handling a coin. It was the same smell as the chain. I walked back, feeling my back like a door without a lock. Inside the truck, I felt an urge to listen to my sister's tape, like opening a window. She talked about a soft-spoken professor and a party with bad cake. I knew the jokes by heart. At the end, before the click, another new phrase, my own: "Don't answer, do it right." It was what Earl had said that morning. I didn't say that out loud, I don't think so. At night, the radio picked up a short whistle repeated 3 times, like someone testing a microphone. And then a woman said my childhood nickname, something only my sister uses, with a wrong drawn-out vowel. Diner. I've been called Diner since I was a child because I was born in the parking lot of a diner. My sister never elongates the I. The siege didn't come as a pursuit. It came as service. They called me to check a line that passed near an abandoned service station, a gas pump with a sign, missing letters, cloudy glass, and a door chime that still swung in the old wind. I arrived at dusk, which is when the desert gets sentimental. The air felt thicker there, a sweating dust. The flies had given up, the farm dogs weren't barking. And there it was, hanging from a beam, another chain. I didn't want to look, but I did. It was quiet, smooth. I breathed. Outside, on the gravel, there were boot prints larger than mine, going back and forth in a short path, like someone waiting for another to arrive. Next to them, 3 crushed plastic bottles with phrases written in pen. "I see you. Don't answer. Come back." I touched one. The plastic creaked like something that once had a mouth. A shadow of headlights passed far away on the road and disappeared without an engine sound. As night fell, I decided to turn on the truck's interior light and leave the door ajar while checking the wires on the pole. I kept watching the seat out of the corner of my eye, like someone watching a sleeping baby. The first steps on the gravel came without shame. Slow, heavy. "I'm not a hero," but I said loudly, "How can I help?" And the man's voice came again from the side of the door. "I have a question." Exactly like that. Only the last word hit the roof of its mouth awkwardly, like water, swallowed the wrong way. I walked 2 steps without fully showing my body, keeping the door as a shield. "It's 4:30 in the morning," I lied. "I don't feel safe." "Who are you?" Silence. The voice didn't say who it was. The distant headlight returned. The same 2 bodiless eyes stopped for a second and went out. The footsteps moved away, 2, 3 notes of whistling, the third cut off halfway. In the abandoned store window, my reflection looked back at me with a delay, like a TV with a crooked antenna. There, on the dirty glass, below me, on a forgotten piece of adhesive tape, was an old photo stuck, wet with dew. An empty cabin, curtainless, with a fallen chair and a battery-powered radio on the table. I swear I heard, coming from inside the glass, the static of the radio my mother used to find a station. I finally understood the message. That thing didn't want to scare me. It wanted to lead me to a place, like someone guiding a donkey in the dark, shaking a rattle near and far until it enters the corral. The question was whether I was going to be the donkey. When the penny dropped, it wasn't a snap. It was a combination of tiredness and shame. The thing learned my breath. It knew when I filled my chest to answer, and when I shrank back to pretend I hadn't heard. It copied words from the living and the dead and returned them with a defect, like tape played too many times that starts to eat the edges. I went back to the car and put the cassette tape in my shirt pocket. I started the engine. The sound that came from behind the station was a distant horn, a metallic howl that was neither a train nor a coyote. "Must be wind in a pipe," I said aloud to nothing. Outside, the gravel made the sound of someone deciding to run. I pulled out in first gear, headlights sweeping up so much dust it looked like snow. About 2 kilometers ahead, at the bent mile marker, I thought better of it and slammed the brakes. You can't outrun a radio. I turned off the engine and the headlights. The night became a wall. The whistle came, single, polite, next to my ear, inside the cab. "Don't answer," my sister's voice said from the tape in my pocket, without me pressing play. "I can't explain it to you. I can only tell you that I felt the tape grow warm against my chest, like a small animal. I fumbled with a trembling hand, pressed play, and let the recorder spit out something alive. The laughter I know, the bad music we used to sing in my dad's car, and then my voice saying, with a calmness that embarrasses me, 'If you're there, speak.' The cab was filled with myself. In the glass, my face became 2 for a second, and in the second face, the mouth moved half a second late, articulating my elongated nickname the wrong way. I got out of the car without thinking and, from outside, looked at the seat. On the seat, casually placed as if forgotten, was my house key attached to a heart keychain with 2 names scratched out with a knife: Alex and Annie. I have never seen that keychain in my life. I ran back, started the truck, put it in gear, and drove away without looking sideways. The road opened into a gorge and the moon decided to rise all at once, white, without asking permission. In the rearview mirror, I saw for an instant a light walking among the bushes, too straight to be a handheld flashlight, as if it were a light that knew its own legs. I didn't look again. The radio caught the last message of the night, almost gentle. "Come back." And it laughed. Not the sound of laughter, the sound of static that decided to be laughter. That was enough for me to know that I would arrive alive, but not whole. The next day, I turned in the job as completed. I tightened screws, noted readings, closed the call. Earl handed me a small bag with more candies and said, without looking, "You did right." I tossed my sister's tape into the glove box, where it is to this day, and I never returned to that ridge. When I pass near it, I keep the radio mute. Sometimes in my room, I hear someone call my nickname with that out-of-place vowel, and I breathe until the urge to answer passes. I learned that some things only turn into monsters when we give them conversation. If you want a monster with teeth and eyes, I don't have one. I have a thing that whistles, learns your weight on the stones, and returns it to you in a tape voice with a crooked syllable. It's enough. The desert doesn't need the rest. If this story got to you, like, share, and follow. The more people listening, the harder it is for the silence to do its job. And if you're on the road and someone calls you with the wrong vowel, do me a favor, don't answer.